I really admire how far gaming has come over the last few decades that it's been a medium, but you know what I really miss? The games I used to play back in 1993. Way back when I was less than 1 year old for a good portion of it. Back then, people didn't make fun of me for crying and shitting myself every time I died. In today's humble opinion, we're building a time machine to enjoy 1993 Space Machine. 1993 Space Machine is a labor of love developed and published by Modesty, and meant to pay homage to the good old days when the space shooter genre was popularized by the cabinets of ye olden days. Back when playing games meant leaving your musty basement dwelling, venturing under the hideous light of the day star to your nearest arcade, and waiting your turn to appease your false idol of choice with coins forged from 100% root of all evil. At least that's how I imagined it went, because as previously mentioned, I was too busy going through infancy to realize that home consoles were even around in the 1990s, much less that they were also more popular than arcades. Speaking of inaccuracies, it also just so happens that the game isn't just meant to pay homage to 90s space shooters. It was actually developed during that time, and just now, due to a bunch of unfortunate mishaps, has been released. Just now being 2016, of course. I must say that the award for most accurately named publisher is going to have to go to Modesty on this one. And I don't just say that because they prominently display reviews in their About section that score them below 9 out of 10, which is generally unheard of, though a trend I hope they plan on keeping with my highly popular review full of prized opinions. I mostly say it because Modesty makes up the bulk of what you're going to find in the game. Being developed for machines back in the 1990s means that it's made with the restrictions of those consoles in mind. Back then they didn't have the capability to render elegant three-dimensional models with flashy particle effects. It was all about how testicular you could make your quivering jowls look and how much of God's light you can banish from the eyes of the players. Actually though, what the fuck is that? Despite its overwhelming simplicity in its presentation and overall game style, it does manage to have a surprising amount of complexity to it, which isn't to say that it's got a whole heck of a lot, it's just more than I expected. For one thing, there are quite a few ships that you can purchase from the store that each have their own strengths and weaknesses. Some boast weaker defenses for stronger offenses or vice versa. Some are speedier than they are strong. Though a word of advice, speed makes for the greatest offense and defense in this game. I tried playing with a heavier ship off camera and did considerably worse. Getting hit more means dying faster and thus being able to shoot less. So being able to take 8 more shots doesn't mean shit if you can't move out of the way of 10 shots quick enough not to die. There are also a lot of weapons to pick from, of which you can fit 2 or 4 on your ship depending on which one you're using. Their placement can also determine how efficient they are, believe it or not, and might benefit from a different position if you're struggling. The downside of being completely a part of a past time period is that it suffers from the things that have gradually been phased out as technology has improved. The most notable is the color scheme, which is excellent for the waves of nostalgia, but awful for being able to read what the hell is happening on screen. The dense patterns and designs in the background bleed into the equally emphasized action happening in the foreground, and that can make it difficult to succeed when you've got a lot going on. Combine that with the fact that your purchased weapons are just as large and prominent as your ship, and you'll have a heck of a time trying to get into a fluid trance because you just can't keep your ship in your peripheral vision. 1993 Space Machine is typically on the Steam store for $8.99, which isn't too terrible of a price in all honesty. The game is pretty solid for what it sets out to achieve, and if you're old enough to appreciate the nostalgia, it could be a fair price to scratch that itch and provide a familiar challenge that you're longing for. For people like me though, you should try and find it at something closer to $5, or wait until its lowest sale price of $2.69. As fun as it can be to experience the past, there's a reason that you and I play the games of today, and its limitation without modern tuning can make the default price a bit rich for our blood. Gameplay for 1993 Space Machine earns an 8 out of 10. It's got tight controls that are highly responsive and succeeds in delivering on its promise of being a game from the 1990s. There's no doubt in my mind that if you loved games from that era, you'll pick this one up and feel right at home. However, it still has a few issues in terms of balance because of this. The difficulty curve isn't a smooth transition with some pretty rough spikes from time to time. And then again, a lot of the difficulty can be lost once you've purchased a few weapons that offer spread, like the split shot or the spread shot. Reducing the need for you to be in a certain place on screen to kill off threats reduces the number of threats while also allowing you to position yourself more smartly. This not only makes the game too easy in some places, but makes many of the weapons almost entirely unnecessary. Then suddenly there's an upswing in difficulty, particularly on the third planet, though I didn't get footage of it, where the environment has some electricity that is just rough to notice, much less avoid among the sea of never-ending bullets. Calm the fuck down, man, this is Steam. You aren't getting any more of my quarters for my death. Value scores slightly lower at a 6 out of 10. The game itself is pretty good, but I'm not sure that it's going to hit home with the majority of the Humble Bundle's target audience here. Now, I might be wrong, but for some reason I see the majority of subscribers being about my age, give or take a few years, meaning that the time period that it comes from might go unappreciated. Everyone that games and is old enough to get it that I've met prefers console gaming. Again, I could be wrong, but that's my experience thus far, and I would need statistics to back it up one way or the other. On top of that, we've already had a game that's about shooting and is placed in space, so even if this one is better and easier to approach, I still feel that it's a little bit redundant, but not necessarily a bad inclusion. With a composite score of 7 out of 10, 1993 Space Machine earns a solid B. If shooting shit makes you feel like the shit, and being shot by shit makes you feel like shit, then this game is probably for you, though we should probably stop talking about shit.